Thank you, Phil. Good morning, friends. It's great to be with you. For those of you that don't know, I know Phil covered it wonderfully. I work as a part of the Pulse team. We focus on ministry with young people across the state and the Australian Capital Territory, and Joe Drayton is now my boss. Hi, Joe. It is absolutely my privilege and passion to speak with you today about growing young and to reflect on this excellent passage about what the heck does that even mean for us. Before we start, can I invite you to please close your eyes and take a deep breath with me, in through the nose and out. One more in and out. Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our rock, our Redeemer, and our source. Amen. Thanks, Phil. If you'd like to bring up the first slide. Look at how technical we are. This is amazing. I'll push on. For those of you that don't know, Groundhog Day is my favourite film. So, Cam, thank you for sharing that with our young people. If you don't know, it's the story of a man who gets caught in an infinite loop. He experiences the same day over and over and over again. He is a self-obsessed, self-important weatherman from like a regional news station in America that gets caught in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. And across his journey of this same day lived over and over again, his life transforms. He becomes a different person. If you didn't know, the author of that film, the man who wrote the story, said that he expected that Phil, who's the name of the character, lived that same day over 12,000 times. And we see just a grab of it. Part of the comedy of that film is him trying to kill himself in the hope that loop will end, and then starting to take advantage of it because he is able to learn everybody's moves and what everybody does so he can steal some money and live a good life and do whatever he needs to do. And in the end, he ultimately comes to recognise that his life is actually not about him, but about other people. It's glorious. I love it. It's my wife hates it. So whenever it's on television, that thing that you used to watch with ads in the corner of your house, I watch it every time, and my wife hates it, and I love it. I love my wife dearly. Please don't misunderstand me. I just love that film. For those of you that don't know, Growing Young, the Magical Green Book, is a study put together, the outcome of research from a study put together by the Fuller Youth Institute in the US, which focused on a bunch of churches that they couldn't fully understand, but why did they have a ministry with young people that grew so large or engaged so many young people? And it's not just mega churches. In one instance that they recall as a part of the study, there's a church in a town of about 5,000 people, a small town in America, that has about 10 or 12 churches in it, and this one church has 300 young people as a part of the life of who they are. Why? What is that church doing that's so amazing and so incredible that they've got all of the young people and everybody else doesn't? This research led them to look at those commonalities. What is it that takes place within the life of those congregations that makes them so different, so attractive to young people? And the outcome was the 6 core commitments that they talk about, that is the growing young wheel. These 6 things that churches exhibit that reveal how they want to engage and how they take seriously ministry with young people. It's not just high schoolers, though that is the large part of their example. This is ministry with little people, high schoolers, young adults, people who are, largely speaking, younger than 30. Now, you might look around your neighbourhood or even around Sydney and see churches like that and wonder, how do they do it? Well, today I get to speak to you about the first of those 6 core commitments, Unlocking Keychain Leadership. But first, if I may be so bold, I'd like you to take a moment to think and share, possibly with the person next to you, what is one of the best memories that you have as a teenager? Now, for some, that's yesterday, for most of the people here. For some, that might be a little harder, but if you can take a moment, think, what is one of your fondest memories of being a teenager, and share it quickly, we don't have forever, with the person next to you, please. Okay, that'll help. You do that. It's all good. Me? God, I'm about to tell you. All right, we don't have all day. Come on, you people. Is there anybody that wants to be bold enough to really briefly just shout out what was one of your fondest memories of being a teenager? Anybody? Making friends, super important, thank you. Anyone else? Church camps, right? Huge, particularly if you've been around church for a bit. They were formative, especially for me, I reflect that. Someone else? Phil? Meeting Marion. I mean, I could say the same thing, but I didn't marry her, Phil. Thank you. I remember fondly camps, particularly for me, growing up in the church, as an opportunity to engage with other young people who were at a various, the same kind of stage in their faith development. What did it look like? I mean, it's great to talk to your youth leaders, but to talk to other young people and hear from them that they're asking the same questions, asking different questions. That stuff was super important. Thank you, Carolyn, for reading the Bible to us so well today. I'm sure that many of you have heard this story from Luke's Gospel before. Here we meet the boy Jesus in Jerusalem for Passover. Ding, another little marker for those that are fans of Luke's writing. And he stays back in the temple after his parents had already left to go home to Bethlehem, which, friends, spoilers, not a short trip. That was quite the journey. So for them to get a day into that trip was in itself amazing. And yet later in verse 49, when they do get back and find him, Jesus, I guess as politely as a teenager can, says to them, "Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" Now, it's important that we don't get confused or misunderstand what's happening here. The author of Luke tells us that Jesus wasn't teaching the scribes. In verse 46, we're reminded that he was sitting and listening and asking questions and engaging in the discourse and debate that was common for the time in the temple. Importantly, those old people must have been saying something really interesting to keep that young person engaged. Those gathered were amazed that a 12-year-old boy had such insight and was able to participate in that gathering of learned men. If only they'd known. So if you want to daydream or ponder or disconnect and just not listen to anything that I'm about to say, that's your prompt. What were they saying that had a 12-year-old boy so engaged? I'll see you at the end. If you'd like to take another moment, just briefly, and tell the people next to you just the short version of the answer to this question. When you were a teenager, which adult or adults made a difference in your life and how? When you were a teenager, which adults made a difference in your life and how? Please. 30 more seconds. Thank you, friends, for participating in this. Thank you for sharing a little bit of yourself with your neighbours. And look, I was going to ask a couple of you again to share. I don't think we need to necessarily because I got the best one before. It's great to have one of Reverend Phil's first crushes here today. Well, I mean, it's worth bringing up, and that's right. It was the wife of your youth worker who was also here. Friends, I can share with you that in my life, there's a few adults that have made a lasting impact. One of them was a youth worker who never disregarded or pushed back on my brashness, boldness, and stupidity, and trusted me with opportunities far beyond what even I thought I could get involved with. That person's belief in me and their welcome of me has had an eternal impact. I would not be standing here today were it not for their encouragement, support, and their handing over of keys that changed my life. I'm fortunate to be able to tell you that relationship continues today, though that youth worker has become a minister and is now retired, and I'm a little bit older too. In the Growing Young research, the team developed the idea that there are 4 kinds of leaders within the life of the church. Thanks, Phil. Key-less leaders, key-hoarding leaders, key-loaning leaders, and keychain, or as I'll put it, key-releasing leaders. Now, the idea of a keychain, I appreciate, is an American one. However, I'm sure we can all understand it. In Australia, we might call it key ring leadership, the place where the keys are kept that give you access to buildings physically as much as the metaphorical ones that welcome you into positions of accountability, direction, and even responsibility. So who are these leaders? Our key-less leaders are often young and inexperienced. These leaders have little authority or access. They spend way too much time proving that they are worthy to have keys in the first place. And often, these leaders feel like they have no say in how things are done or where their church is going, and are frequently expected to do everything. Key hoarding leaders hold all the keys and don't trust anyone else with them. These people are often the power brokers of the church, though they aren't always the ones in high profile or high visibility positions. These leaders don't share well and often drive people away who offer to help. Key loaning leaders, now that sounds great, doesn't it? The keys will be shared, but only for a limited time. They want that key back quickly. They're keen to have others involved, but nobody does a job as good as they do. The last group, our keychain or keyring releasing leaders. These are best identified as the ones who know the keys they hold, and they often hand them out while training others to have their own sets of keys. They open doors and opportunities, and everyone seems to get better when these kinds of leaders are involved. I'm sure that we can identify these kinds of leaders in our lives. And it's likely that the adults that you talked about that made a difference in your life when you were a teenager fall into this last category. Now, I could spend another 20 minutes diving into each of these leadership models and explaining how young people fit into these categories and how important it is to recognise which type of leader you are and all of that sort of stuff. I'll keep my powder dry. You'll get to that when you read the chapter. But let's cut straight to the heart of it. Unlocking Keychain leadership is about releasing power. The power that we wield within the life of our church that we use to protect ourselves and to help us feel safe and warm. When we release the power that we have and we hand it over to others, we are engaging and participating in the deep work of discipleship that God calls all of us into. Nobody became a follower of Jesus because they felt they weren't trusted. Nobody became a follower of Jesus because everything got dumped on them because the person doing it was too tired or disenchanted with having to do everything. Releasing power isn't about us stopping the things we do for God. It's about welcoming others into it with us and encouraging them to lead us. If we want to see our churches grow, we must be prepared to release all the power and control that we hold, often tightly. We must release our grip on everything that we cling to and allow it to be given to other people. How else will we fully participate in God's mission and work in our lives, in our churches, and in our communities if we don't release our power and let God be God? Lots of churches are looking for the quick fix, silver bullet solution to their shrinking numbers, particularly the yawning chasm that is the demographic represented by Generation Z and Alpha and their parents. Today, I get to share with you the answer, and it's going to blow your minds how simple and yet at the same time complex it is. Are you ready? The secret to solving declining church numbers and helping your church grow young isn't about giving young people leadership opportunities. It's about releasing our power and growing relationship with young people inside and outside our church. Thanks, Phil. When we release our power and share it freely, as Keychain releasing leaders do, we reveal our vulnerabilities and our own search and need for Jesus that welcomes others to do the same. This will naturally open opportunities for others, especially young people, and lead us into new places where God is at work. That's the kind of leadership that comes from people who are disciples of Jesus, friends. Releasing power and building relationship. Just like Joseph and Mary, we're all looking for Jesus. When we hold our power lightly enough that we can allow God to work miracles with it, we can better engage in building relationship that helps people realize that God is already at work in their lives. They just didn't know it. Just like those leaders in the temple. They too were looking for the Messiah, and there he was with them the entire time. Amen.